Sin Fronteras Western New York, Buffalo's media platform for Western New York Hispanics,
producing bicultural content that informs, entertains, and inspires the forward thinking.
Sin Fronteras Western New York, delivering bilingual stories,
hot topic conversations,
and the voices from our Latino community.
Sin Fronteras Western New York,
la única producción contemporánea en español
y en inglés en la ciudad de Buffalo. Sin Fronteras Western New York,
your connection to cultural ties in Latin America
and hyperlocal news in the Western New York area.
Sin Fronteras Western New York es para ti.
Bienvenidos a otro episodio de Sin Fronteras Western New York. As we reach our 5th episode, we want to extend a warm welcome to all our new listeners joining us on this journey. Today, we're taking a moment to reflect on the best of our first month by revisiting standout moments from the incredible guests we've had the pleasure of hosting. In a special type of episode we call Lo Mejor de lo Mejor, the best of the best. Our initial episodes aired only once, but with the expansion to on-demand podcast availability, we wanted to ensure that no one misses out on these important conversations. You can now catch all our episodes anytime, anywhere, on your favorite podcast platforms. We kicked off the new Sin Fronteras Western New York experiment with a very special guest, Jonathan Rivera, who currently serves as a New York State Assemblymember for the 149th District. It was an honor to highlight such a prominent Hispanic public servant from our community for our very first episode. You can't go anywhere without hearing the dreaded I word, immigration, and everything that's happened in the last year here in the Buffalo and Western New York area. I think it's very important, and we speak about this because for a portion of your career, you serve on the Erie County Commission of New Americans, or ONA. Mm-hmm. Now, that's the Office of New Americans. So correct me if I'm wrong, but that's pretty much helping to set up a foundation or all the services within government that are helping new immigrants, residents, refugees coming to this area.
I really am thankful for that learning process. I mean, the county executive was kind to let me kind of run with that when I was there. And we had begun it there. I mean, that's when we started it. And the idea of it was, like I said before, the county government interacts with everybody, right? Mm-hmm. Whether you want to open up a restaurant, whether you, were needing health services, or whether you just needed to connect with social services, from employment assistance to resume assistance to job placement to everything else. So a lot of people, when they're first here, they interact with county government. What we were finding was there was a bit of a disconnect between individuals who were coming here in whatever path they came here and interacting with county government. What we had was, and we still have, and it's good and necessary, organizations that work to sort of resettle people or assist people when they get here, and those organizations would interact with county government. But what I thought was going to be a different approach was, well, why don't we create a space that at least once a month we come together, me from the county executive's office, and high-level either commissioners or high-level leaders in the various departments directly with individuals from those communities. So that's what we did. So in a given month, myself and the Commissioner of Senior Services and the Commissioner of Social Services and a handful of other commissioners like mental health or health, we would be in a room, and then, individuals themselves, not some intermediary, these individuals themselves that represented the Bengali community or the Burmese community or the Bhutanese community. They would come before us and they would just tell us what their situations were like dealing with county government. So that was super informative to tell us, yeah, I mean, obviously there's language barriers, and that's a perpetual thing that government just needs to be better at all levels, is dealing with, the provision of services in other languages, but it's more than that. And I got to learn firsthand around like why these breakdowns were happening. And I think in many cases it started with people that are just coming here for the first time. It's not like anybody else that's relocating. If I moved from, Rochester to Buffalo, it's a change, but it's not a shocking change. But to come from another country where you have, in many cases, legitimate distrust towards your government, to come here and be told, well, you're going to interact with government a lot, that in itself was a bit daunting. And trusting government is not something that they're, should be doing in some countries, right? So, when you come here and you're sort of thrown to the lion's den of confusions, there are things that we have to do to be not just more customer friendly in a way. There are things that we have to do to just take into account and just be more culturally competent around the things that make us unique. So that was really helpful. So that was my sort of entryway into it all. Since then, I've worked more and more with refugee resettlement agencies and really more around asylum seeking assistance. That's taken me to go to other parts of the state that I don't even represent, where I know that there are Latinos kind of coming into communities that in some cases are not very welcoming. I've been multiple times in Jamestown, for example, where about a year ago, I got calls around, there's an uptick in folks from Colombia that have come from the southern border here. You don't really know how they arrived in Jamestown of all places. But so I went down there. I went down there with clothes. I went down there with food from food pantries. I went down there to talk to them about where they are in the process, what they want to do. So, I've met with farm workers from counties that aren't anywhere near here, here in this office. And, I feel as though it's a responsibility, if I'm going to wear the only Latino majority member in upstate New York, then I feel it comes with a bit of responsibility to look at the plights and the struggles of Latinos in other parts of New York that are not just in this neighborhood.
I'm glad you touched on the lessons learned in that capacity at ONA, because I think we've all in the last year saw the what's been going on, like I said, with immigration, other state leaders trying to score political points. We've seen immigrants being used as political pawn pieces, some of them ending up in New York City. Unfortunately, the city themselves getting inundated with immigrants and having trouble assisting a lot of those refugees, a lot of them asylum seekers, and a lot of them found their way out here to Buffalo. To kind of summarize what that year has looked like, that was, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but that was early September, maybe sooner than that. It was when the wave started, but we've heard a lot about that. We've heard good and bad. Without getting too much into the details, but sexual assault cases, there were concerns about who would be footing the bill for all these newly resettled immigrants, and the company, the medical company DACO, that was responsible for the lodging, the ad hoc lodging out in, correct me if I'm wrong, Cheektowaga, outside of your district, but still a issue that affects all of us in this area. So what were the lessons that you've learned being around this area and from that experience about the current state of those immigrants?
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. I guess I'd start with asylees have been coming to Western New York since asylum existed. Like, we forever have had people come here in one way or another seeking asylum. So that's nothing really new, in part because we're right on the border with Canada, and in part because the same reason that my grandfather came here, because there was perceived to be economic, opportunity here. So we've always had asylum seekers. We've never really had the issue that we've had last year or earlier this year. Then we've had, it just hasn't been an issue. I think what we've learned is, what we know, I should say, is we invest in our refugee resettlement agencies. And maybe it's worth taking a step back. So that sometimes people sort of combine asylum seekers and refugees under the same thing. Refugees are individuals that have been pre-cleared in another country, often their home country or a country that they've been displaced in. They're pre-cleared by our federal government to meet whatever parameters the federal government has laid out. And they've been permitted to come here, and then they are placed. When they are placed, they're placed with an organization, and we have 4 refugee resettlement agencies here in Buffalo, but there's organizations all over the country. And those individuals are afforded a more expedited process in sort of planting their feet somewhere. So they're placed here, they're given assistance towards where they're going to live, how to enroll their kids to school, how, where the services are available, where's this, where's that. They're given a lot of information and support when they're here. We fund refugee resettlement agencies additionally in New York State, which is not what a lot of other states do, is in that a lot of refugee resettlement organizations solely rely on funds directly from the federal government, when ours do. But New York State provides additional, which I believe this year was another $7 million just towards resettled refugees. And those individuals are given an employee authorization number, which is essentially their version of a social security number, which allows them to work almost immediately. So for folks, we had a big wave of Burmese refugees in the last 10 years or so, folks from Bhutan, folks from Somalia. It's increased over the years, and it's diversified in countries, but those are sort of the bigger waves that we saw. Those individuals, they have their own struggles around language access, certainly, and around connecting with employment, and on top of every other limitation that people have in Western New York. For asylum seekers, it's a bit different in that these are individuals that they've either begun the process at the border at their crossing, or they're beginning the process here of seeking asylum. Seeking asylum is the legal process that we've created in this country to allow for someone to be here. It's our process. We lay it out. We are the ones that determine the limitations. We are the ones that determine numbers. It's the federal government that decides that. Like I said before, we have been, asylum seekers have been coming here for generations. This past year with this DocGo arrangement has been pretty brutal. It's been poorly managed. Communication has been terrible, I think.
Because I think $432 million, before folks get up in arms, those $432 million, I believe, came from New York City. They funded, a lot of that came from New York City. They were the ones funding this
and I'm not trying to let sort of New York City off the hook, but it's New York City, as well as is a city that receives its own flow of asylum seekers. Mm-hmm. Then with this huge uptick from Texas and other parts of the country where they were just busing people to these cities, that's an undue burden that New York City never expected, because why would they have expected that the governor of Texas would want to play politics with people's lives and ship people to New York? So some of the folks that came from New York eventually landed in Buffalo and other parts of New York State. Now, I'm in a way grateful that they came to Buffalo, but I am sad that they had to go through the process that they went through. And it's so clear that this arrangement with DocGo was bad from the start with New York City, not with us. And that, I think at the end of all this, the Adams administration is really going to have to, things are, I think more things are going to come to light around how DocGo was chosen and all that. But in the end of the day, we have these folks here, and I have to give a lot of credit to Senator Ryan. He really stuck with this plan around figuring out the best way possible to assist these folks living in hotels, because living in a hotel is not a permanent solution. Mm-hmm. Living in a hotel for a child is very hard. On top of not knowing the area, on top of not knowing the language, on top of going to school and you're the only kid that looks like you in some school districts. So to his credit, he really pushed for this. And what he was able to secure was, I want to say 23 million or 22 million of dollars from New York City, which is an important distinction to make, that it's not from the federal government. It's not from state government. It's from New York City, to cover the cost of housing and to cover the cost of services for these 500-ish individuals that have been placed here by New York City. We're the only city that was able to accomplish that across all of New York State.
So with all that we heard, a lot of it, negative press around it, we also, it's a program that has had its successes.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So, Jewish Family Services is one of the refugee resettlement agencies that's been resettling people for years. It knows the process. It knows how it's going to look to connect people to legal services, which is honestly the biggest hurdle when folks come here to seek asylum, is just access to legal services. They know the process. They know the housing. They have already their network of how to place people into schools and ESL classes and everything else. So, it only makes sense that we would have provided this funding to an entity that already knew how to resettle folks. So they're now going to be able to do that with the population of individuals that were, essentially abandoned in these hotels. So I'm appreciative of that solution, and I really think will be a model for the rest of the state, that if we make the investment into proper housing, then that means everything. Because once a person has a roof over their head that they can count on, everything else will fall into place, including, frankly, their mental health. Because living in a hotel, and I've visited these hotels, I can't imagine raising a family in some of these hotel rooms. It's
living out of suitcases, it's living
and totally forgotten about. And you're in the middle of a place you've never been before. And I think when people talk about asylum seekers or anybody that's going through any sort of status through immigration, people tend to be pretty quick to be judgmental and critical, when in reality, they've never looked in the eyes of a parent that just wants their child to be healthy. It's easy to look at numbers and say, oh, we have so many people coming here this way or that way or over the border this. But at the end of the day, it's families, it's children, it's just people wanting the best for their kids. And it's the absence of humanity in people to sort of reduce people to this minimized idea of you're committing a crime and immigrants are this. And, it's our crime problems that we have in Western New York. It's not because of immigrants. It just isn't. It's never been that way. It's never going to be that way. And what we've also learned, if we want to look at this in a positive light, is if you invest in people that are willing to stay here in Buffalo, then it pays dividends. The only reason we have population increase is because of resettled refugees and people that are coming here, leaving their countries and coming here. It's not because people are lining up to take high-paying jobs in Buffalo. They're not. It's because we have people filling up our neighborhoods where there were vacant properties. They're no longer vacant. Where we had vacant storefronts, there's no longer vacant storefronts. Where we had a diminished tax base because we had so many vacants, we now have an uptick in that. So the irony is that you can go to parts of the state where there is this diminishment of population. You see all these towns and villages that are shrinking. But if you have hundreds, if not thousands of people willing to relocate, why would you not bring them in? Why would you not create an environment where we can, invest in people and then they'll flourish? We give away tax breaks to entities that never need it. In my district, Amazon received millions of dollars in tax breaks to do what? To create a warehouse where they're paying people less than $20 an hour, which is not a livable wage in Hamburg. Does Amazon really need our money? I would have rather given them $2-3 million, whatever it ends up being, to an entity that can just bring people that already want to be here, allow them the initial investment of housing or whatever they need, and they will stay here. They will develop roots in this neighborhood, and they will raise a family here, and they will work. But instead, we think of economic development in this sort of mindset where we have to accept crumbs. That's the problem in this region when it comes to economic development. We went through so many years of the same humdrum story of Bethlehem Steel left, then this company left, or if you're in Rochester, Kodak left, or if you're in Binghamton, IBM left. Like these huge employers left. So whatever we can get, we got to be thankful for. When in reality, if all we did was incentivize people that are already here to stay here and make it so that we are a more welcoming space for more people to come, we would not have those problems. The Amazons will come and go, the IBMs will come and go, the Kodaks will come and go. But if you invest in people and in neighborhoods, then they're not leaving. That's the difference. We throw away public money in many cases with IDAs, which is a whole other thing, that we just hand out public money and think that that's the best thing possible. Last year, the Niagara County IDA gave a tax break to a Moe's. A Moe's. What on earth development is a Moe's going to do for us?
We're talking Moe's,
the restaurant, the not good chain Mexican restaurant.
Whoa, that's your opinion. No.
Yeah. But that's possibly hundreds of thousands of dollars over the term of it. And what did it create? A couple minimum wage jobs?
A few more.
$15 an hour jobs, $16 an hour. Like that's not the thing that's going to move us from one of the poorest cities in the country to an affluent city.
So is it misappropriation that you feel is a part of?
I think it's all a mindset. I think that we got accustomed to crumbs in this region. And we also got accustomed to entities not bringing their best effort and us accepting not their best effort. And it goes into our mindset of us not deserving the best. When I look at our playgrounds and I think that's not the best for our kids, or when I look at a school system that's not delivering the way it should, I think that's not the best. Why is it that suburban school districts look a certain way and urban school districts look a different way? Why is that? It's not because teachers are better or worse or students are better or worse. It's about the investment. And for too long, we've been okay with mediocre investment and mediocre effort because we're Buffalo, because we're a city like this, and because we have these issues. No. We have to look at ourselves as a real destination for people. And we have to look at ourselves as not an afterthought, not a second thought, but we need to walk with the kind of confidence that we should because we're something different. This is a special city. It has a history that no other place has. It has an arts community that no one else has. It has an architectural history that no one else has. It is unique, but we still tend to walk with our heads not totally up because we look at the things that haven't changed quick enough, and instead of doing something about them to change them.
Following Assemblymember Rivera is no small feat, but for our second episode, we got to hear from two cultural figures in the Western New York area, Wilmer Olivencia Jr. and Charles Torres. Despite demanding current and former day jobs with the city of Buffalo and New York State Police, Wilmer and Charlie have committed themselves to uplifting our Latino community through two major cultural events. Wilmer, as the president of the Pucho Olivencia Community Center, the site of the annual Grease Pole Festival, and Charlie, as president of the Puerto Rican and Hispanic Day Parade, share their passion for celebrating our Latin American heritage and the need to foster a sense of community.
the impact and the mission of the Agustin Pucho Olivencia Center and Pucho Incorporated. Obviously, I think it starts with your grandfather, and then it's once again the lineage and the respect for what came before us. You have kept that mission alive and going. Can you explain a little bit more of what the Pucho Olivencia Center means to the Hispanic community of Buffalo and what the mission is for?
Yeah, so the Agustin Pucho Olivencia Community Center its originated with Centro Puertorriqueño. Back when they attempted to apply for some funding, the big question that they always would receive was, well, do you only service the Puerto Rican community? And they said, no, we service everybody, They said, well, you have to change your name then. So it then was later changed to PRACA, P-R-A-C-A, the acronym, which stood for Puerto Rican American Community Association, which then incorporated everyone, right? As my grandfather retired and decided to move back to Puerto Rico, they renamed the building in his honor, and now it maintained as the Agustin Pucho Olivencia Community Center. How did that come about? When the first Latinos first moved here, my grandfather was a musician and he wanted to run a location to throw a dance. So he contacted the establishment and said, hey, my name is Mr. Olivencia. I'd like to rent your place to host a dance. And they said, sure. So my assumption is that they may have thought that maybe he was Italian or of some other ethnic origin. But when he went to fill out the contract, he was basically, kicked out and said, we don't rent to your kind. We don't want you here. Don't ever come back. That's what kind of lit the fire in his belly to say, we need to build our own place. So how the heck did they do that? A bunch of...
They created a monster.
Yeah, young Latinos that, were new to the Buffalo area to say, let's get together and, let's look to do some fundraising and let's build our own place. So I believe it took like 3 years. But they were able to go to work, get out of work, and actually lay the bricks that where we participate and where we have events today, built by the people for the people. So it's a beautiful thing. Casimiro Rodriguez is definitely a community leader here. Got to witness it firsthand. The people would line up at my grandfather's house to say, "Let me drive you. Let me, I want to see, how is it that this movement is going?" And it was just huge. It was something that he was definitely ahead of his time. But
And it's contagious, sir.
It is. So that's what started it, and here we are, 55 plus years later.
55, and it's a shining beacon of Hispanidad in the community. It's on Swan Street, if I'm not mistaken.
261 Swan Street, correct?
You got merengue nights, salsa merengue nights that you can go and learn a step or two. Do la rueda. You got, what other events take place at the center?
So
other than the Grease Bowl.
Yeah, so the Grease Bowl is our biggest fundraiser. It's what keeps us to keeping the doors open and providing the services that we do. On Wednesday nights, if anyone is in the Buffalo area and they're looking for an awesome salsa class, Fanny with Baila Salsa does a tremendous job. We get people from all over the world, looking that if they're interested in taking a salsa class, definitely our place is the place that pops up first for that. You would think that you're at a nightclub on a Friday night and it's a Wednesday.
Are you getting non-Hispanos out there?
Tons of non-Latinos
Yes.
that are participating. You have the people who are looking to get married and they want to learn how to dance, right? You have the divorcees that they've been out of the dating game for a while and they want to go there. You have the seniors that retire and they say, man, I just want to do some exercise and then you have the guys that like to drink their medalla, their Corona. And so I just want to come and hang out, have a beer. It's a location. It's like Cheers. Everybody knows your name after about maybe 5 or 10 minutes. During our salsa night, we also have the Gabriel A. Rodriguez Post 1928, who's housed there at the Agustin Pucho Olivencia Community Center. They purposely have their meetings. I may be getting these guys in trouble, but they purposely have their meetings on Wednesdays because they know that there's going to be a crowd there. They know that there's going to be action, right?
No trouble there. It's just getting. Yeah. They know the crowd.
They do, and they sit at the bar. Some participate in the dance class, but most of them just like to people watch. And welcome people in. Mm-hmm. Buy that young man a drink, buy that young lady a drink, and they're like, "Who sent that to me?" They're like, "That guy right there." And, "Hey, what's your name?" And before you know it, everybody knows everybody, and they're like, "Man, I've never felt so at home." If I got a nickel for every time somebody would tell me, "I'm not Puerto Rican, but when I come here, I just feel like if I'm back home, if it's Argentina, if it's Cuba, if it's Colombia, wherever," they just say, "Man, it's like a certain vibe that, it's just so welcoming that, we just love coming here." So our Wednesday nights are awesome. We have Halloween event for the kids and for the adults. Just to
Three
provide-
Kings as well.
Three Kings is huge. We service
Los Reyes Magos. That was,
thousands and thousands of kids. We work collaboratively with all of the different Latino organizations. If it's Puerto Rican Hispanic Day Parade of Western New York, HHC, the Hispanic Women's League, the Gabriel Rodriguez Post, just to mention a few, we all come together and say, how can we work together to help these kids? What makes our event very distinctive from others, because, in the city of Buffalo, you have a lot of, not-for-profit organizations or, churches or individuals that say, we want to help the lower income families with, on how they like Christmas or Three Kings. What makes ours so distinctive is that not only do the kids get a couple gifts apiece, but the parents, could win things. We have a free raffle where kids are walking away with Power Wheels or bicycles or iPads, more higher end gifts. This year, or this past Three Kings, we had a lot of asylum seekers. They came. They had nothing. When they won a $50 gift card or $100 gift card to Wegmans, their tears just came down. It was like really emotional. People have different highs per se, right? Some people like to work out, or some people like to, dance or whatever. I think my adrenaline thing is helping people and watching them, put the smile on their face. If it's with dancing, if it's with food, if it's with cultural enrichment, whatever. But definitely that center provides that time and time again.
We spoke about your father, but Agustín Pucho Olivencia, a Borinquenier. I don't know how many folks know about that legacy of the Borinqueniers, the 65th Infantry Regiment, if I'm not mistaken, in the Korean War. You mentioned a little bit of the resistance that he was met with when he wanted to do his own venue. Can you explain a little bit about the history of the Borinqueniers for those that are unaware?
So I'm very limited, but from my experience, the stories that I've heard, he fought in the war. He was assigned to the 65th Infantry. He was able to travel. He learned English, and it's what helped him when he came here to Buffalo to migrate. A lot of our Latinos that left Puerto Rico or wherever, language was always a barrier that prevented them from progressing. Right, working in the farms of North Collins, because he spoke English, he was able to serve as like a mediator between the farm owners and the workers. But Buffalo then became the city that they would come to buy their clothing or buy their food. And he migrated here to Buffalo, made Buffalo his home. Brought his wife and his 3 boys. The rest is history.
It's the steel industry and farming that brought a lot of us out here. And when we talk about Pucho, it's important to touch on it because he also gave a big sacrifice to his country. So did the rest of the Borinqueniers. They didn't get the same respect at times. I know there's a monument now, thankfully, at the Veterans Memorial Park, and it's great that we honor that legacy.
I doubt.
We touched on the importance of our cultural identity and our origins. I like to always end our conversations kind of getting to know a little bit about what drives you in that regard. How you got here. I mean, Wilmer, you mentioned it. Your grandfather was the one that planted the flag here. Charlie, I'm curious how you ended up here in Western New York. How your family's been here. How did one get to Western New York of all places from Puerto Rico?
Sometimes I wonder that myself. So I was born in Puerto Rico, in Cabo Rojo. We moved from there because we had a lot of family in New York City. So you get a lot of the Hispanic community here that has kind of gone through New York. Mm-hmm. You came through Miami, but
the big city was too big.
Yeah, a lot in New York City. So I was in New York City till I was 15. My mother came here in 77, right after the blizzard. My mother came the following summer. As you see now that you've been a pseudo-Buffalonian for a few years now, our summers are beautiful. Mm-hmm. So that's what she came and witnessed. She was raising 3 kids on her own. She was also raising my cousins. So there were 6 of us in New York City. So she's like, Buffalo, New York, I got to get these kids out of the rat race.
Maybe.
And moved us up here. And, I've been fortunate enough, in my career with the state police to be able to move anywhere in the state. And I always came back to Buffalo. It's a great community. It is a city of good neighbors. We have a diverse city and growing Latino population. And with events like the Grease Pole that just happened, it still gives you that sense of being home. New York's only 6 hours away. I go there.
Only.
I go there periodically, and after about 3 or 4 days, turn around and glad to be back home.
You get your fix.
You get your fix.
As far as our population, the Latino population out here, what do you think is the biggest concern in your opinion to us? Like we should be concerning ourselves with, or should put our efforts towards?
I think it's just recognizing history. You know, a minute ago we were talking about the winning Canadians. What we failed to mention was that was part of the government's segregation, you know, of keeping Hispanics in one group, keeping the Tuskegee Airmen as another group. And we need to recognize that through these valiant efforts of these soldiers, people recognized that they weren't different than the other soldiers. Not only that, they exceeded. These soldiers won Congressional Medals of Honor and Medal of Freedoms. So by recognizing these opportunities that they created and seeing what else can be created, that's what we want to instill on our kids so that they can know that they can continue to move forward to achieve these things like being a commissioner and as we have in the city here, so that they know that they're not limited in their dreams.
Yeah, and I echo your sentiments, Charlie. Definitely, growing up here in the city of Buffalo my whole life, I was kind of forcefully, got to see a lot of things that, just helped me to be and sculpt me and mold me to be the person that I am today. I was fortunate and blessed to have, my grandfather and my uncles and my dad as mentors. A lot of times, a lot of our kids don't have that. So, the program that Charlie is implementing with the boys there, I think is a beautiful thing. A lot of you asked them, I worked in sports and rec for a little bit, and, I coached the basketball team, and I would say, I want you to keep a journal. And these kids never left their block. They didn't know how to make a tie. It was like, whoa, where's your dad? I don't know who my dad is, or he's in jail, or he passed away. So we have to break that. And for those that don't have it, the ones that are here, we have to, help nurture those kids. Yeah, definitely.
Beautiful answers, gentlemen. I appreciate that. And real quick, I feel like I'm talking to individuals rich in Hispanidad and la cultura that we all share. How do you maintain and celebrate your Latino heritage in a place that's not? We're big. We're not the biggest, but and how do you maintain that? Besides your initiatives that you do on your own, that your family member, you have kids. How did you impart those cultural touch points on them?
For me, I think it was a no-brainer. Just having it, seeing it my whole life, it was something that it was just, we're mere images of what we see growing up, right? So seeing that my whole life just transitions to me, instilling that in my kids. It went from my grandfather to my father to me, and now to my kids, and now my grandkids. When my grandkids fly in or drive in from where they live, and they're like, "Well, Papa, we want to go see the monument where Grandpa's name is on the floor." Or we want to go to the club where where they have the festival. And we want to eat. We want to go to Niagara Cafe and have some pastelillos. So it's and these are kids that are 5 and 7. But we've instilled it in them. I've instilled it in my kids, and now they're instilling it in their kids. And I think that's something that's huge that we have to do.
It's kind of like the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, and you see that in some of our great families on the west side, and particularly like the Olivencias. And we just need to make those trees bigger with a lot more apples falling, so that not only are they relying on their fathers, but on their friends' fathers. What they see is what they're going to learn. So the more of us out there that are doing this kind of work, that's what the kids see, and they're able to emulate that and hopefully continue on these traditions and continue to grow.
And finally, when bringing Sin Fronteras Western New York to Radio Bilingüe and Western New York Airwaves, we wanted education and awareness to be part of our core mission. In our third episode, we featured Ed Negron, a longtime mortgage broker and area manager for U.S. Bank, who provided invaluable insights into the often complex world of real estate. His expertise is crucial for our Hispanic audience, one of the fastest growing segments of the U.S. homeowner population.
Tell me a little bit more about what you do.
So I've been a mortgage banker for approximately 30 years now. Basically, what we do is we lend to people looking to purchase homes, either single family, investment properties, new construction, 1 to 4 unit families.
Tell me specifically what your typical client looks like that you serve, and what makes you the ideal match for assisting them, especially when it comes to the Latino population and their home buying journey.
So when I started in the business, I started actually in 1986 as a real estate agent. And at that time, I was the only Latino real estate agent and broker in Western New York. I remember at the time I had a car and my license plate had VNDOCASA, Vendo Casa. And that was, I was well known in the area for doing that. First time home buyers, Latino population. Then I became a mortgage banker. I was recruited into the position. And that stuck with me. I basically became what they call a CRA subject matter expert, which is dealing with first time home buyers and low income folks. So it just flew. And so I basically have been helping first time home buyers along with move up buyers, affluent buyers, but mostly focusing on low income buyers, helping them maneuver through the home buying process, whether it's through home buyer education, through telling them where to go to find a grant, or making sure that they're in the right product.
So someone who might be super new to this whole journey may be confused as to what in the world does a real estate agent do and how does that differ from a broker?
Yeah.
Can you break that down?
So it's interesting because when you say someone may be confused, everyone's confused. Okay.
I'm glad it's not just me.
So I say that because the education piece, I remember a long time ago, I went into an office to meet an attorney. He was a high-powered attorney. He was a litigator. He's on the phone. I walk in, he's sitting there and he says to me, he hangs up the phone. He goes, Ed, how are you? I said, great. He goes, let me tell you something. I'm an attorney. He goes, I know nothing about mortgage. I need you to talk to me like I'm 10. I never forgot that because most people don't understand the process. You don't learn mortgages. You don't learn real estate in school. So I don't care if you're a rocket scientist, an attorney, an accountant, you're not going to know this stuff. So my job is to walk you through that process and that journey.
So I'm going to follow up on something that you said earlier.
Sure.
Times are different now, though. And yes, there was a time that buying a home was a goal for everyone and was the, American dream. But that's not really the case anymore.
No.
A lot of people just can't. So with that, some new folks have rolled in to take action on what's happening right now. There are a lot of new builders who are now focusing on building new constructions, single family homes, not for purchase, but for rental only. You'll see a brand new subdivision and all those brand new homes are there for renting purposes. So now, talk to me a little bit about that. And also, would you tell that person that perhaps they may have that credit score, but they don't have enough down payment or closing costs? So they're thinking, well, I just need to keep renting.
Right. So it's an interesting topic that you bring up with regards to the rental piece. So one of the things that's really being created right now by the fact that your rate at one point was sub 3. Okay. There are many people out there with interest rates below 3. Those folks don't want to move to a new place now because they don't want to lose. They don't want to lose their place with that 3% rate. Right. So because of that, there are not enough homes coming on the market for resale. So there's causing a housing shortage. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I will tell you, and I find this to be very interesting. I was listening to a podcast the other day, and this gentleman had a company out of Canada. They have a business in the U.S. Their business is purchasing single family homes. They had 60,000 single family homes that they purchased throughout the U.S. Their numbers, their revenue has increased well over 163% year over year because of the amount of renters that are out there. And that's because of the housing shortage. But that person's also that company's creating the housing shortage because they're buying 60,000 homes that could have been available for a first-time home buyer. If you look it up and, fact check me, Jeff Bezos just invested into a company to purchase single family homes in the U.S. So there are a lot of renters out there. And you know what? I've always said through the years, I think that everyone should or has the ability to purchase a home, just not at the same time. Not everybody's going to be ready. But there are folks that don't want to buy. There are folks that want to, they do want to rent. But there is a housing shortage right now anyhow. So my wife and I we recently sold our home after 30 years, and I was tired of the maintenance. I was tired of the snow. So we wound up moving into a townhouse, and we rent. And we do that just to see how we like it. I may buy again. I don't know, but I like where I am in this stage of my life. And there are people that just don't want that responsibility. But if somebody comes in and they're looking to get pre-approved, my goal is to see how can I get them into a home? How can I get them out of, a rental situation? One of the boards that I'm on, they handle the Section 8 housing market here. And somebody can use their Section 8 voucher to purchase a home. So there are certain things that can be done for renters to help them get into a home with very little money out of pocket. And the biggest issue is finding a home. That's right now, I can qualify 10 people, and the difficulty is 2 might find a home. The others, you got to wait till the right house comes up. There's multiple bids happening on properties. I've heard 20, 30 bids on one house. It makes it difficult.
Arrive is the company that Senor Bezos has backed, and
leave it to Lorenzo to fact check me. Thank you.
It's an angle that I think it's great you bring up, because I feel like the shortage has become
it's a big issue.
It's all income. It's revenue generation.
Yeah.
It's private equity and investors that are getting into a lot of purchases, and that's what's driving up the price everywhere.
And to go back to your question, you had a question on new construction.
Mm-hmm.
To enter into new construction nowadays, a house that you would have been able to build for $200,000 5 years ago is going to cost $4.25 today.
And then the land.
And exactly. So it's nothing's getting cheaper. It's all just a matter of when you're ready, just jump in and do it. I mean, and I don't mean jump in and do it. You're going to do it with direction, but there's never. It's almost like having a child. Is there ever a good time to have one? You know what I mean? I guess you can plan, and I have had 2, and they've turned out well. But but for the most part, it's you try to plan, and you hope for the best. You know what I mean? But again, I would do, if you can pay rent, you can purchase a home.
Well, during the pandemic, people were buying these houses outright cash.
Yes.
Especially in our area, they were coming from bigger cities where they're used to, bigger costs, and buying houses cash, which added to more shortages in our
absolutely.
area. So what does that look like now? How the market changed, and what's a typical down payment that you need now?
Yeah. So, it depends on, first of all, the market in itself, again, is there's a housing shortage right now. There's very little homes on the market. And so when one does come on the market, you got a bunch of people, a bunch of buyers looking at that same home. So you have to be in a good position. What winds up happening, and I think it's very frustrating. I recently was on a panel with 4 other panelists, if you will, regarding fair housing. And one of the things that we brought up was the fact that there are multiple programs out there that are designed to help the first-time homebuyer, whether they be Latino, whatever it is. The issue is, if it's a FHA loan, if it's a VA loan, there are some additional things that come with that, meaning that the appraisal might be a little stricter, whatever it might be, but that might be the only product that customer can qualify for. What'll happen is, when a house is for sale, the homeowner may not want to accept those products because they're guaranteed by the government, and they come with a little extra stipulation. So it knocks that customer out of the running for buying a house. And so, to me, I think it's unfair. It's you can't tell a homeowner who to sell a house to, but I think that things need to be done on the product development side to help those programs be more accepting to sellers, so that everyone has a level playing field. And that's one of the things that I've seen become more of an issue, that you have customers who have to use a specific program. If somebody has a low credit score, they're going to go with an FHA loan because the FHA is more lenient, allows for more flexibility, and your interest rate doesn't change based off of your score. But if you have to go with a conventional loan, which is sold to Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac, then it becomes a little different because your score impacts your interest rate.
When you're buying a home, does it differ per state? For example, if you're a first-time home buyer in New York State versus one in Florida, is it different? Or just in general, buying a home here versus, let's say, Florida, who tends to have, looser laws on things, generally speaking? Yeah,
so it's a good question because, first of all, to be considered a first-time home buyer, the definition of a first-time home buyer is anyone who hasn't had a mortgage or written off mortgage interest on their tax returns for the last 3 years. So if you owned a home and sold it and then haven't bought a home in 3 years, and now you come back to me, you're a first-time home buyer.
That's a trade secret.
It is.
Yeah, that's a good one to know. Bring that one.
So yeah, a first-time home buyer is the definition is 3 years. So if you haven't owned a home in 3 years, you become a first-time home buyer again. That is the same anywhere you buy. What changes in the different markets is the median income. So for instance, to qualify for grants and subsidies in this marketplace, a family of 4 have to make $76,400 or less to be a moderate income family to qualify for grants and subsidies. That number might change in Florida. It changes per county wherever you go. That number changes in downstate New York. It changes. So each market has a number that they can use. And there's a website. It's the FFIEC website that we go on, put an address in, and it'll tell you what the HUD median income is for that area.
It's not Zillow or
No. These are government run websites that the government uses to regulate lenders.
Thank you for clarifying that, because I don't know if it was true or not, but I was told that, you need less down payment if you buy a home in Florida.
No, not at all. Not at all. When it comes to purchasing a home, you can get into a house with as little as 3% down. If you're a veteran and you have a VA eligibility, you can buy a house with 100% financing. All right. But if you're buying a typical home as a first-time home buyer, and you don't even have to be a first-time home buyer, you could be a home buyer moving up, you can get in with as little as 3%.
And that applies nationwide?
Nationwide, yeah. There's a misconception, all right? Most people think that the banks make money on the interest that are paid on a mortgage, right? That's not how the banks make money. What the bank does is the bank basically originates loans for the benefit of selling them and taking care of them. And I'll give you an example. The bank will originate, U.S. Bank will originate a loan, I'll originate a loan to guidelines given to us by, let's say, Fannie Mae, right? Once we originate that loan for Fannie Mae, the objective is to close it. And then once we close that loan, we sell the loan to Fannie Mae, right? The Fannie Mae now owns that loan. After Fannie Mae has taken possession of the loan, they want nothing to do with it. They're like, listen, we bought it from you, but you take care of it. For taking care of that loan, we're going to pay you a fee. That fee is called servicing. That's where the banks make money. Fannie Mae is collecting the interest, where they're paying us on servicing. The bank I work for services approximately $260 billion worth of loans. So what that means is every month we're getting paid to take care of that loan for Fannie Mae. If there is a situation, sometimes you'll hear people say, oh my God, my mortgage was sold. Now I used to be with this bank, now it's with that bank. It's not your mortgage that was sold, it's the right to take care of it. So if we have $260 billion worth of mortgages that we're taking care of, that value for us on that servicing is probably $3.4 billion. That means that we're going to make $3.4 billion taking care of that, right? Every now and then a lender might say, we're going to sell a block of loans because we want to upgrade our software or our computer systems. We're going to take that money and we're going to sell it to another lender who's going to take care of it. Now they become the servicer, and then we'll collect upfront money for the loan we just sold, to the servicing rights we just sold, and we take that money and we invest it back in the bank. So it's convoluted. There's a lot of things going on, but the banks don't make money on the interest. Where I'm going with this is the products that are set out there for purchasing, whether it's a first-time home buyer, investor, jumbo home buyer, are already given to us by investors like Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac. Those guidelines and those programs are the same all over the country. So somebody buying here has the same guideline as somebody buying in California or somebody buying in Florida. Nothing changes. There might be some programs that are available through the municipalities, that are available through the non-for-profits to help people purchase homes, but it's not the product that's changing. So again, nothing's going to be different in a different state. What's going to be different is maybe the ability to help you get into that house. So,
are you able to talk about buying or selling a house or buying a house overseas?
So,
like, let's say you want to buy a house where, your family's originally from, and you're from Cuba.
Your revenue.
Yeah. So, it's interesting because my wife and I considered just buying a second home in different places. We're still on the fence with that. My theory is if you buy a house someplace else, you're obligated to go there, as opposed to not buying someplace else and renting for a month here or renting for a month there. But so what winds up happening is there's regulations and there are restrictions in place by the various countries. So somebody can't just come from London or from wherever and just, they could buy a house here, but they'd have to pay cash. When you're paying cash for that, there's a lot of scrutiny and eyes about where those funds came from. You know, ever since 9/11, the Patriot Act, anybody with funds in the U.S., if you have more than $10,000 or $20,000, you have a lot of movement in your checking accounts, it could be an issue, and you know, you just have to verify where the government wants to eliminate money.
The origin of the setting.
Exactly. So having said that, for someone to come here from a different country and buy, the chances of them getting the mortgage right away, it's going to be very tough. Your visa is going to determine what type of financing you can get, your residency, what you're doing for a living, how long you're going to be here. There's some variables that really come into play. The same thing applies when somebody's going to go from here to another country. So we were recently, last year, we were in Aruba, and we love going there. I've been there many times. And when you move there, you cannot purchase a home right away. You can't go to Aruba and get a job because they don't want you to take jobs from their people, from their citizens. So the restrictions are going to be based on what each country gives. So to answer your question, what a lot of people do is because they've built up so much equity here in the U.S., let's say on some of their homes, they'll take a home equity on their home here and pay cash for a house in Puerto Rico, or pay cash for a house in the Dominican, or they'll pay cash using their home equity line and the equity on their home here to buy a house out there. Very rarely are you going to be able to get financing for a house out there unless the owner is willing to hold the mortgage. That means it's private financing. But each place is going to be very unique. And then there are going to be some situations where you want to be conscious of what you're purchasing, because there could be some clauses with regards to non-citizens and the ability for the country or the government to take that property for some reason if you're not paying the taxes. And the same thing happens here. So there's so many variables, but I can tell you somebody moving from here to someone else they're either going to pay cash or they're going to finance in some way other than using financing in the country they're in. I did a loan for a professional athlete many years ago, probably about 20 years ago, and he was buying a place in Mexico. But they had to use an equity loan here and purchase the house out there. So it could be confusing. It could be there's a lot of information to tread through, but it can be done. It's just it's difficult to buy a home in another state sometimes, let alone another country. But we see it done every day.
So I guess taking it back to our population, the Latino population, we kind of touched on it. What are the trends? What are the biggest hurdles? I know the multi-part question here, but what are you seeing from the Latino home buying section of the population?
Yeah. So what I'm seeing and what I'm hearing, again, I'm on the board of directors, the Northeast Regional Governor Board of Directors for NAREP, which is the National Association of Hispanic Real Estate Professionals. They do a study every year, and the Latino population is the number one rising
section of the population
that's up and coming to purchase homes, to open businesses. I mean, we're
trying to plant our flag.
Exactly.
The American dream, the Latin American dream.
But again, it all goes back to, and one of the things that NAREP is really focused on is making sure that we have people that look like me in the various segments, whether it's in financing, whether it's a real estate agent, whether it's an attorney who closes the deal, whether it's the title company that handles it, that there are folks that look like me that can help the folks that need the direction because of the language barrier. That's a big focus for the organization. And so I think right now, I know, it's definitely noticed by the industry. So, lenders are out there. We're focusing, a lot of our information that we have is in Spanish. You can go and apply in the applications in Spanish. I can tell you 6 years ago, it was not. I didn't have access to that.
Just 5 years ago.
Just 5 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's stuff that is really evolving. And because of the fact that we're up and coming with regards to just being the fastest growing population, it's making a lot of people take note.
And to add to that, gentrification, we can't talk about this world today without gentrification. So what do you tell, the average Latino person you're working with that wants to stay, let's say, in our area, it's Niagara Street, right? That's where predominantly the Latino population is, specifically Puerto Rican.
Right.
There's a large Mexican population out in
Sure.
Niagara. But that is pushing the boundaries because there's a couple businesses out there that are not so Latino-ish.
Right, exactly. Yeah. There's more than a couple.
Yes, I was holding myself back.
Yeah, and I certainly wish I had an answer for that. I just think that, again, we need to, as a community, just make sure that we're speaking out and doing the right things. Our leaders are doing the right things to make sure that when housing opportunities come up, that they're happening in our neighborhood as well. The biggest issue right now is houses. I mean, while there are some homes available, many of them are in a condition that probably aren't livable. There are lots that are owned by the city, and I've met many times with the city on some ideas that they're planning and are actually implementing on creating affordable housing. But again, affordable housing is becoming less affordable because of the cost of material and all that good stuff. But still, I could, to the city's credit, they've taken some opportunities and made it so that, they'll put a grant in place, or they'll help the builder build a house at a subsidized amount to make it affordable for folks. But it's a tough thing. If I had that answer, I'd probably be doing something else. But and it's not just our market; it's everywhere. It's a tough situation. I think of a first-time home buyer in Manhattan. Like, what do you do? It's like you got a 500 square foot condo selling for $1.2 million. It's making it difficult. So I certainly don't hope that our community gets to that point, but I just think that we need to get the right people in the right places to make sure that we're looking out for those folks.
This has been Sin Fronteras Western New York, lo mejor de lo mejor. Once again, we'd like to thank the guests that have made this first month possible. Assemblymember Jonathan Rivera, Wilmer Olivencia Jr., Charles Torres, and Ed Negron. We hope to have an entirely new episode for you next week. But in the meantime, if you're looking to revisit or listen to any of our episodes for the first time, you can find our on-demand podcast episodes wherever you get your podcasts. We would like to remind everyone listening, if you have any concerns, feedback, or a topic or story that we should be covering, we welcome you to reach us at our program's email address, sinfronteraswny@gmail.com. I'm Lorenzo Rodriguez, and on behalf of the Sin Fronteras Western New York production team, thank you for tuning in. We've only just begun. Dale, we'll see you next week.